Man, it's hard not to feel, as we sit here in 2024, like there are auditions going on for a repeat of 2020. You know, this has been mostly a local crime story, but it's starting to creep up into the national space, and I want to nip this thing in the bud real fast. There is a crime story out of Chicago that some are trying to turn into George Floyd 2.0. That's what's going on with this story in Chicago. Traffic stop of Dexter Reed, who was not wearing a seatbelt, and resulted in Dexter Reed getting shot and killed. There were dozens of gunshots, 96 shots fired in this fatal traffic stop, and there is quickly a movement to make this 2024's George Floyd. I don't really bring any joy when I say this, obviously. I mean, somebody has lost their life. That's not something any of us should be celebrating or happy about. But at the same time, as we sit here and share this story with you, in case you're unfamiliar with it, this is now covered extensively by places like CNN. It is all over certain cable news outlets. And they are trying to distract from many of the issues that Americans are facing right now by bringing forth the age-old narrative that people of color need to be fearful of law enforcement. And this is potentially the latest story they're going to use to pursue this. So this goes back a couple of weeks. It goes back to March 21st in the city's Garfield Park neighborhood. And Dexter Reed was stopped in a traffic stop because he was not wearing a seatbelt. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Traffic stop starts to go a little sideways. Female cop begins asking him to, hey, open up your door, open up your door. He's not doing it, and let's take a listen to the body camera footage.
Unlock the doors now. Open the door now. Open the door now. Open the door now. David, shots fired, shots fired! Hey! Hey! Shots fired! Ferdinand Neighbors, 10-1, 10-1! Hey!
So that is the body camera footage from the female cop who was directing Dexter Reed to open up his door during this traffic stop. And then what we have right now, and the most recent information on this came from the Civilian Office of Police Accountability this week. They're the ones investigating it. Preliminary reports indicate that this incident began when 5 Chicago police officers assigned to an 11th District tactical unit engaged in a traffic stop of Dexter Reed Jr. for not wearing a seatbelt. City agency is the one responsible for investigating allegations of police misconduct and all police shootings. They write here, upon stopping Mr. Reed, multiple officers surround his vehicle while giving verbal commands. When Mr. Reed did not comply with these commands, officers pointed their firearms at Mr. Reed. And ultimately, there was an exchange of gunfire, which left Mr. Reed dead and an officer shot in the forearm. Review of video footage and initial reports appear to confirm that Mr. Reed fired first, striking the officer, and then 4 officers returned fire. This is the investigation and the viewing of the body camera footage that has been done by the group that is involved in investigating any police shootings up there in Chicago. So right out of the gates, I mean, this thing, there's nothing to this story. There isn't. A guy shot at police. I mean, that's the reporting that we have right now based on body camera footage done by an independent investigative unit. Yet somehow this is turning into, in some areas, George Floyd 2.0. That's what they want to make this into. Now, God willing, they're not going to be successful in this because any thinking person looks at a story where a guy shoots a cop and he ends up getting killed. I've got a great bit of advice here. It's only 6:10 on a Thursday, so I hate to give away my best advice this early in the morning, but a great way to not get killed during a traffic stop is to not shoot at the police. Oh, you knew that already? Oh, okay. Never mind then. I'll save my better advice for later in the morning anyway. Okay. Well, yesterday you had Dexter Reed's mother take the podium in a press conference. And my goodness, you feel for anybody who lost their son. That's just the human being in you, in all of us. But, man, it's like they're taking auditions.
He had just bought his new car 3 days before that. And he was just riding around in his car. He said, Mom, going for a ride. And they killed him. They killed him.
He was not just riding around in his car. That's not true. Now, he was riding around in his car without a seatbelt. And law enforcement has a right to try to enforce laws, especially in a city as dangerous as Chicago, and do routine traffic stops. But, man, to tie it back here to Kansas City, right, what have we seen on routine traffic stops just this past week? We had a cop shot here in Kansas City on Sunday night during a routine traffic stop. Thank goodness he is going to be okay physically as far as we know. You had a police chase that began in Franklin County that ended up here in Gardner on Tuesday afternoon. That was also a routine traffic stop. Routine traffic stops are what cops do. And by the way, it's proactive policing to do routine traffic stops, whether it's speeding, whether it's not wearing your seat, whatever it might be. That's them doing the job that we as the public citizen, in large part, pay them to do. It's not just reactive. In a best case scenario, policing is proactive. And to sit there and use the angle of, it was just a traffic stop over a seatbelt. It was. Yeah, it was. And you have somebody who didn't roll down the window and who then, according to independent reports and body camera footage, what happens? They end up pulling the gun and shooting a cop first. That's why this happened. It was not due to a traffic stop. It was not due to not wearing a seatbelt. The only reason Dexter Reed is not alive today, and the only reason that his mother has to stand up there and obviously cry and be upset, and you can feel for her, but the only reason she's going through that is because her son shot a cop. Plain and simple. Nothing more to it than that. But, man, I mean, the way I'm seeing this thing covered over the last 24 hours, it is starting to feel like people are trying to get the narrative back from 2020. And in part, when you got the economy where it's at right now, the inflation numbers from yesterday, it's hard to not think that they're trying to make a move on something that gets a little juice back into onto their side on some of this stuff, because they do not have it as we sit here today. It's 6:13. It's great to be here kicking off a Thursday morning on KCMO. Quentin Lucas is going to be joining us at 7:30 in his usual slot, the mayor of Kansas City, fresh off a trip to Washington, D.C., where he was advocating for student loan bailouts. I couldn't believe it. So he'll be here at 7:30. Can't wait for that conversation on KCMO. Coming up next, a survey was done by a Jackson County legislator asking voters why they voted no. And we've got the results of that survey that we'll share with you coming up on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Even the headlines bother me in the way that they're written by some of the national news outlets in the wake of this Dexter Reed shooting that some people are trying to turn into George Floyd 2.0. The headline here from CNN, 96 shots fired in fatal traffic stop. Here's what the body camera footage shows. What if the headline just read, man in traffic stop shoots at police first. 96 shots returned in fire, or something like that. I mean, the way the headline is written, and then, I read the story off CNN. I like to do that sometimes, go to other news outlets and media outlets to read about these stories. And you gotta work, man. You gotta work to find the facts in these stories, John.
You do, and they like to use little tactics, like called the big scary number tactic, the one that quoted there.
Yeah, 96. Whoa!
Yeah, we like to equate numbers of death to something when we, the whole COVID thing, and Vietnam War, and it makes it sound big, but then you look at the actual number.
Yeah.
Or what really happened.
And that's what matters here, what really happened. And preliminary investigations suggest, based on body camera footage, that the driver, 26-year-old Dexter Reed, opened fire on officers first during, yes, a routine traffic stop that went sideways. You feel for everybody involved. But my goodness, this thing has got to be nipped in the bud real fast. But as I noted earlier, it's almost like they're taking auditions. It's 2024. It's an election year, Mike's in Gardner. Hey, Mike, good morning. You're on KCMO Talk Radio.
Morning, Mundo. Hey, that headline should also say that he fired first with an illegal gun, because that is a gun-free city and state. Every time I go through Illinois, I break down my gun and put it in a lockbox in the trunk. That gun should not have been in his possession. And when the officers came up, and maybe they realized pretty quick that there was a gun involved, and that's probably why they got frantic, because he shouldn't have had a gun in Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one of the many issues, on top of the fact that it looks like when I watch the body camera footage there, Mike, you've got somebody who is wearing a ski mask. People who are generally, and I speak in generalities when I say this is from personal anecdotal experience. There's only one time in my life I think I've worn a ski mask in my car. And it was after I got out of the Chiefs-Dolphins playoff game, and I couldn't thaw out. That's the only time I had a damn mascot in the car, a ski mascot in my vehicle, coming out of Arrowhead Stadium back in January.
That'll do it to you.
That's the only time. And even then, had I been pulled over, that mask is coming off real fast for obvious reasons. So you've got all these things that lead up to this, and the most important thing, the only thing that you need to know about this story with Dexter Reed in Chicago, as some try to make it national, is that this guy, according to the independent investigation, shot first. That's it. That's the extent of what you need to know. And right there, the story's over. There is no story. I don't care about the local grifters and the local hucksters and the national people who might show up and try to make a buck off of this. There's nothing to the story beyond that. And this thing needs to be nipped in the bud real fast, because if not, people are going to try to spiral this thing out of control, and the timing is going to be perfect in their eyes. Now, back here in Jackson County, I want to share this with you. This was done by Jackson County legislator Sean Smith. He is going to be on the show this morning at 8 o'clock. He did a survey of over 4,000 registered voters. That's a big sample size. That's bigger than any poll or survey that I saw anywhere. Now, there was no demographic information collected, so it's really impossible to tell, who responded to this. It's not scientific from that standpoint. However, 4,373 registered voters were asked and responded to why they voted no in Jackson County on the stadium tax last week. And here are some of the biggest takeaways from this survey. It's the first, frankly, the greatest survey that's been done in the wake of last Tuesday is this radio show. It's your calls. Like, if the teams have been listening over the last week, this is the place for them to get a feel on what they screwed up. There's nowhere else in this town that's covered it as extensively, with a broad listenership base that has given their opinions as to why the no vote won out last week. But this is as big as anything we've seen, 4,300 registered voters in Jackson County. And the thing that stood out to me beyond anything else, only 12% of respondents cited fear of the teams leaving as the biggest influencer in their vote. Basically, nobody believed the teams. And or people got so ticked off at the teams, they basically told them, take a hike. Not that anybody actually wants them to take a hike, but they told them in the polls to take a hike. because that was a big part of the messaging down the home stretch, right? Whether it was on the flyers. Save our Chiefs. The radical left is trying to get the Chiefs out of Kansas City. That was one of the flyers that was sent to me. Save our teams. I'm looking at some of the ones here that we still have on the desk in front of me. Do you have a plan to vote? These are ones that John got. No new taxes. Same great teams. But anyway, people didn't buy into that fear, despite the fact that the teams tried to push it down the last couple of weeks. Whether it was, comments from Mark Donovan, comments from Sly James, flyers and mailers that went out, save the teams. People didn't buy it. And the fact that only 1 in 10 voters in this survey that was done by Sean Smith cited fear of the teams leaving as the biggest influencer on their vote is incredibly telling. It's that, 1, the Yes campaign did a poor job messaging, and 2, one of their biggest talking points they used the last couple of weeks, nobody believed. 33% of people who voted no in this survey done by Sean Smith chose factors such as parking, stadium location, crime, and the conditions of the current stadium as their driving decision makers. So basically, they didn't trust them on parking, and I don't blame them. I've had that issue before as well, wondering where people are going to park for this. Stadium location, okay. A lot of people like where it's at, don't want to go downtown. Crime, we talked extensively about crime, the way the city has not been in a good place right now and hasn't been for several years. And you're now going to take your family down for a Wednesday night baseball game, trying to walk around the city and get to a parking garage and get out of it and all that nonsense. You're going to do that in this environment? A lot of people said no thanks. And then the conditions of the current stadiums. People saying the stadiums seem fine. I see nothing wrong with what they're doing and how they're doing. Oh, concrete cancer. I don't want to hear about the concrete cancer. Nobody does. That was always weak. And the people spoke. You know what's going to be fascinating because the team is playing so well right now? Did they win again last night? Did they play last night? Mark's got his thumb up in the air. Okay.
Yeah, they won 11-2.
11-2.
Over the Astros.
Very good. Very good. Okay.
Apparently the walls are crumbling out at Kauffman Stadium. They lead home runs. They've hit the most home runs and given up the fewest at the current. So that's a nice little stat. Vinny Pasquantino had one last night.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
Here's what's going to be interesting. If they are playing winning baseball, if they're playing playoff baseball in August and September, and the K is packed to the gills for the first time in a decade, what's ownership going to say then? Oh, we need a new stadium because, well, we got to make money. No one wants to come out here, build it, and they will come. It's actually build a winning team, and they will come. This town has shown that time after time after time. You build a winner, and they will come. And in some ways, a part of me wonders if they actually don't want that. Because then it's not going to make them look good for the push for a new stadium. Coming up, Mayor Lucas was in D.C. pushing for you to bail out other people's student loans. We'll share the audio next. Mayor Lucas will be here in 1 hour, as usual, Thursday morning, 7:30 slot. We're looking forward to that on KCMO. You know, we got a lot to discuss with them, of course. But, man, then I find out yesterday he's in Washington, D.C., advocating for you, taxpayer Joe here in Kansas City, who either paid off your student loans, didn't go to college, paid off your kids' student bills on your own, saved, socked some money away, didn't take the lavish vacations, didn't buy the nicest cars because you wanted your kids to go to college debt-free. Well, the mayor yesterday found himself in D.C., advocating on behalf of Joe Biden's illegal student loan bailout scheme, the voter buying scam that he is attempting to do. And he will undoubtedly get slapped down by a judge. They're not going to allow it. If you want to do this, it's got to go through Congress. You cannot have the president of the United States willy-nilly spending money that Congress has not approved. You can't have it. But for some reason, Quentin Lucas, I don't know if he's lining up his next gig. I don't know if he was bored with what's going on here in Kansas City. I don't know exactly why he's there doing this. There's enough things happening here in this town. But either way, he was in D.C. yesterday, and he was making the case for Joe Biden's student loan debt bailout scam. So let's play the package here. You know what? No, let's go clip by clip. What do you say? We go clip by clip, or you want to hear the KCTV 5 full package with all the clips? Which one do you want? All right, let's go 5.
Opportunities to start businesses, to build their lives, to raise their families without having to make choices between paying student loans and covering other debts.
Mayor Quentin Lucas says student loan service providers are failing their borrowers, causing more unneeded financial burden. Loan companies like Mohella, headquartered near St. Louis, is one of them.
A 39-day average email response time frame. 39 days. We've heard more. Posting incorrect monthly payments, misplacing records and payments, denying promised relief.
Mayor Lucas says it is loan providers like Mohella that need to be held accountable for fueling the student loan crisis in America and making it hard for borrowers to pay off their debt. Across Missouri, more than 849,000 borrowers owe more than $30 billion in federal student loan debt.
The burden is especially strong for black women in our city, on the east side of Kansas City, for Latinas on the west side of Kansas City. And this student debt crisis has perpetuated racial inequalities in my city and many others.
Mayor Lucas goes on to say that this debt is holding many people back from succeeding.
Accountability and cancellation of student debt would be the single largest investment in America's working people that we can today, with real benefits for everyone.
All right, that was the mayor yesterday on Capitol Hill during a Senate hearing talking about student debt bailouts and why Joe Biden should be allowed to unilaterally spend billions of dollars on bailing out student loans. I found it interesting when he talked about, this would open people up to start businesses, to pay off other debts. So once again, you want to make the slippery slope argument, as I will right now. Where do you draw that line? Where do we draw a line for a government to sit here and say, no, it might be nice for you to not have a debt payment, but guess what? People have car payments, people have mortgage payments, people have small business loans, people have credit card loans, people are paying debt every single day. And for some reason, we pick this debt and we say this is the best way to help people, despite the fact that it's inherently unfair. It would be more fair to actually wipe out credit card debt. Now, it's too much, right? It's like $1 trillion. But it would be more fair to wipe out credit card debt because, in theory, you are helping people who need it the most, who cannot cover some of their maybe basic expenses. They've got to go into credit card debt for that. With student loans, you are theoretically helping people who have the ability to make more money than the average person who did not go to college. It still is beneficial to go to college if you study the right thing. If you don't, you end up with a gender studies degree and $100,000 in debt. And guess what? I'm not paying your loan, and nobody in their right mind should pay your dopey loan. That's not how this should work.
I'm curious about what makes them think that if they're not paying their student loan debt, that they're going to redirect it to other debt.
Well, that's a great point as well.
Come on.
What makes you think they're not going to go buy, the latest goods, services, filet of fish or something at McDonald's with John Anthony? Who knows? There's a million things they could do with that money.
I might postulate that might not be the only debt they still owe.
Well, excellent point.
Or behind on.
Yeah, or behind on.
That's what I meant to say.
Yes, for sure. So when he says that, when anybody makes that argument, it's a shallow argument. Because this is helping people who theoretically have set themselves up to make more money than somebody who did not end up going to college. But that person who did not go to college is going to be, in part, on the hook to bail out the student loan debt. And the other thing that we hear a lot about is root causes, right? I love when it's crime-related or anything. What do you hear a lot from certain political figures about? The root cause of issues. How does wiping out student loan debt do anything to address the root cause? And the root cause is the price of college astronomically exceeding inflation rates for the last 2 generations now. Wiping out student loan debt doesn't do anything for the young adult who is stepping on college campus for the first time this fall. It does nothing for them. It does nothing to get the spending from the colleges and the costs for the colleges under control. It doesn't do a damn thing. And Quentin Lucas knows that. That was a purely political stunt yesterday. That's all it was. Will he admit that this morning at 7:30, coming up in 50 minutes? I highly doubt it. But that's what it was. It was a political stunt. 913-408-7957. Paul is in Kansas City. He's on KCMO. Good morning, Paul.
Hey, Pete, how you doing? Yeah, the one thing where liberal Democrats say this investment will help working people, that's just a code for we're going to spend other people's money to help our political agenda. When he said that, and what about that young sailor that's sitting out in the Red Sea fighting the Houthi rebels? He didn't sign a document. He's out there. He's the guy or girl that's going to have to pay for this person that voluntarily signed this loan document. That's a sham, and I don't know why he's doing that. He lost the endorsement on the tax thing. Now he's going to lose this endorsement. I don't know what he's doing, but looks like he's going to go for 0 for 2 at the plate.
Well, the only thing I can think is that this is about what's next.
Yeah,
the only thing, Paul. There's no other rhyme or reason for him to be going to D.C. on a Wednesday to advocate for Joe Biden illegally bailing out student loans. And let's be clear. It is what he is attempting to do is illegal. The Supreme Court has said as much.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Yeah, there's a method behind his madness. It's his future career is what he's doing. But here in Kansas City with the inflation numbers go, you think we'd be back here at City Hall trying to figure out how to lower our taxes and get more money in our pocket versus giving somebody that we have to pay for their loan document.
Yep. Thank you very much there, Paul. Let's go to Matt. He is in Independence. What's up, Matt?
Hey, I just wanted to say I worked in a bookstore at a college, and I won't name the college, but I would watch people come in talking about student loan, and they would come in like a free reign. They have bags of chips and candy and food, and they were like, well, how much do I have? And no regular person that has a family that balances a checkbook doesn't just come in and just give me everything that I can get, you know?
Yeah. No, you're right. It was like, how much can I spend based on, however much money I've got in the account based on some student loan. That's what you're getting at, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. And I didn't finish my college because I couldn't afford to. I had a family. And I don't think they should be spending our money, and I don't think that idiot should be doing it.
Do you have any loans left over there, Matt?
Oh, no. I never took any loans. I paid for it up front. I went through community college.
Gotcha.
And paid my stuff like a normal human being should.
Good deal, brother. Thanks for the call. 913-408-7957. We'll get to you on this because, man, something tells me that we're going to have a good conversation at 7:30 this morning with the mayor of Kansas City after this stunt yesterday. I just don't know why he's doing this nonsense. Why? I will share a story that I don't think I've ever shared with this audience on a private conversation the mayor and I had before he was the mayor. And it's a 180 from what I'm hearing right now. It's nothing, he's not going to be upset by it, but I will share that because I've never shared it on the air. And we'll hear from you at 913-408-7957. 6:45 on a Thursday. Pete Mundo on KCMO. Let me take you back to spring of 2019 here in Kansas City. We were downtown. We were carrying the debate of the Kansas City mayoral candidate debate that was going on, and I'm looking on Google Maps. I'm trying to remember where this was. It might have been at one of the hotels downtown. I remember being in a hotel lobby ballroom. And at that point, there were still a bunch of mayoral candidates who were involved in the race. It was not down to the final two of Quentin Lucas and Jolie Justice. There were still probably 6 or 7 folks in the race. And we carried it here on KCMO. And then what happened is Quentin Lucas came up to me, and he had been on the show a bunch, and, we were getting to know each other. He was still obviously on the city council then. And he says, hey, would love to come on the show sometime and, talk about my conservative-leaning economic philosophies. And I said, sure. And I gather we had a couple of those conversations leading up to his time when he was elected mayor. And one of the big reasons he was elected mayor was because the right of center Kansas City voter thought he was a far superior option to Jolie Justice, who was endorsed by Sly James. And it worked for him. Fast forward 5 years, and Quentin Lucas yesterday is in Washington, D.C., advocating for student loan debt bailouts. That's not the guy from 2019. It's not. And I'm going to ask him about that coming up in 40 minutes when he's on this show. Because I don't mind, maybe you have a change of heart, you have a change of opinion. But come on, you cannot go from saying, I've got right-of-center economic policy beliefs to Joe Biden should bail out billions of dollars of student loans because that's what the working people want. I promise you, that is not what working people want. In this town or in this country, that is not what they want. That is not what they are about. I've got texts right here on the text line, 913-408-7957. Pete, if you pay off the student loans, I'll be expecting my reimbursement check for my kids' education. I haven't been on a good vacation in 20 years. I've got an old car, and I haven't updated my home in 22 years, and I'm okay with all of that. However, if they're handing out the money, here I am. That is a great text.
Student loans would affect everyone in the metro, not just the east side of Kansas City. So, the saying, East Kansas City has got 99 problems, and student loans is number 96.
Yeah, well, that's right. To make it like it's all about the east side of Kansas City, please. Trust me, it's much more about Overland Park than it is the east side of Kansas City. If you're talking about student loan debt on a per capita basis, I mean, that's just, let's be real here. Wes is in Gladstone. He's on KCMO. What's up, Wes? Good morning.
Yeah, Pete. Why is he doing it? He's staying on the plantation, man. As simple as that, okay? What I'd like you to ask him is, where did he get those statistics and the numbers that says that it's impacting black women on the east side most and Hispanics on the west side most? Where's the study where he got those statistics? Okay?
Yeah.
And I just looked up his salary. He makes $163,082 a year. He makes more than Mike Parsons and
Laura Kelly.
Yeah, Kelly. So he's decided that his way to make a living in this world is to become a puppet for a bunch of old white Democrats back in Washington, because that's what he's doing. He's dancing on a string. Oh, and really quick, the gal you had on yesterday who's running for Jackson County prosecutor,
yeah,
her or whoever you have on your show who's running for that race, please ask them, are they taking money from George Soros groups? Because if they are, you're going to get the same thing.
Well, let's be honest. If they are, they're not going to admit it, Wes. They're not going to be, George is my guy. You know that.
Well, then how about you do some research? Because
you can't. No, it's not. You can't find where a lot of these dark money groups are funding. It's not that easy, Wes.
Wow.
I can't find out. I can't find out who's funding KC tenants.
That's a problem then.
I know. And part of that is Missouri. I don't want to get too far off the path here, but part of that, Wes, is Missouri state law. The Missouri state law allows for a lot of gray area. I mean, it ties back to the Eric Greitens donors, too. You don't know where the money's coming from. Scott in Kansas City's next up. Hey, Scott, good morning.
Good morning. 3 points, if I could.
Yeah.
One, we just came through a decade of the lowest interest rates ever. People refinance their houses like crazy. Why not have offered something like that with a rate reduction to students who had these loans over the past 10 years? Some of those student loans are out, as much as 12% a year. That's a killer.
Mm-hmm.
Second, back in the mid-'90s, I think it was 1994, they made the student loans non-bankruptable. If you made them bankruptable where they actually had to, people had to be qualified to borrow that money, the lenders would think twice about who they give the money to. And then the third was Quentin Lucas and your last caller talking about the black women on the east side. I was in the mortgage business several years ago, and I remember this one very nice black lady that called in, had $126,000 in student loans, and she's a social worker making $24,000 a year. Somebody sold that poor woman a bill of goods about a college education and what it was going to do for her. And so, anyway, those are the 3 points that I'd make.
Those are people all over the country that deal with that, right? I mean, people. This is the problem. We want to talk about root causes. People are getting sold a bill of goods. You've got a public education establishment telling young people to go to college when their skill sets or interests may not be needed for college. They get told to go to college. They go into a tremendous amount of debt. They can't pay the debt back. And then the government, which obviously funds the public education system at large, says, hey, we're here from the government and we're here to help. That's what they do. Bert and Polo, next up.
Hey, Pete.
What's up, buddy?
How are you?
I'm doing well, Bert. Come on, man. I got to go.
Hey, it's a good morning. My home loan just identified as a student loan, man. It's a great day.
There you go.
Hey, I'd just like to know if you can ask Quentin Lucas, if he's getting an itemized list for this money, how it was spent for these kids on these student loans.
Yeah, I'd love to know that as well. I would.
Because I'm a product of that. I mean, I had a lot of kegers on student loan money. So.
And you're not alone there, Bert. You are not alone, my man.
One thing that they could do to help fix the student loans, why don't they rate a degree just like whenever you go buy a house? I can't go buy a house, $1 million house on a $50,000 salary,
Yeah. No, listen.
Like you said, have these colleges have some skin in the game. Until they do, there's nothing that's going to change.
I agree. The colleges need skin in the game, Bert. Mayor Lucas at 7:30. Don't miss that. Coming up next, the biggest issue as Joe Biden addresses inflation coming up. 7:05. It is great to be here on a Thursday morning on KCMO. And man, oh man, you want to talk about a guy just not getting it. Yesterday, we had this inflation report come out, and it came in hotter than expected. Prices in this country are now up 19+% going back 4 years. February of 2020 to now March, which is our latest report of 2024, prices across the board on average are up 20%. If you have not gotten a 20% raise the last 4 years, you are poorer than you were in February of 2020. And most of us have not gotten that. Those are the facts. That's what's happening right now. You want to talk about helping out the working man. How about not pushing inflationary policy? And student loan debt bailout, by the way, will create more inflation. Because if the government starts paying off loans that people now have freed up, they're going to spend that money. They're not going to dump it into a savings account. Suddenly that money is going to get spent, and inflation will then pick back up. It seems like every time the government says it's here to fix something, it really just screws it up. I know.
Talk about a bombshell.
Some of you can't believe it, but that's the facts. That is the truth. So yesterday, with this hot inflation report, the president got asked about it during a press conference he was actually doing. I know that was a big one as well. And just take a listen to what he had to say on this inflation report that is, once again, not a good sign when it comes to cutting rates anytime soon. That can't happen this year. There's no way the Fed can cut rates this year. It's done. It's over. No rate cuts. I'm predicting it now, at least if the Fed is doing its job. And the president is trying to kind of weasel his way around on this one.
Well, I do stand by my prediction that before the year is out, there'll be a rate cut. This may delay it a month or so. I'm not sure of that. We don't know what the Fed.
The birds are calling BS in the background.
But look, we have dramatically reduced inflation from 9% down to close to 3%. We're in a situation where we're better situated than we were when we took office, where inflation was skyrocketing. And we have a plan to deal with it, whereas my opposition talks about two things. They just want to cut taxes for the wealthy and raise taxes on other people. And so I think they have no plan. Our plan is one I think is still sustainable.
What? I mean, there's so much in there. Even the birds are calling out the BS in the background. Inflation compounds. This is Economics 101, which I know this audience at large understands. The guy who is just talking does not. Inflation, which ticked all the way up to 9% during its peak over the last couple of years, has come down to about 3.5%, 4%, depending on the month. But that is 3.5% on top of a 9% increase from a couple of years ago. And you look month by month by month, and it is on average 20% more expensive to live your life than it was 4 years ago. Because inflation compounds itself month after month and year after year. Saying inflation has come down is meaningless unless it's negative. And you don't really want a negative inflationary environment because that would mean absolute economic chaos. But talking about reducing inflation as if somehow that means prices are reverting back to where they were is not how any of this works. It never has been. But that line is an appeal to the low information person who's just not paying attention. And to say that, we're better off and inflation was spiraling out of control and he's knocked it down. What is he talking about? In January of 21, when he took office, inflation was 1.2%. That's where it was in January of 21. Like, what I'm laying out for you right now, you might view it as some type of deep political segment. It's not. I'm just sharing the facts on what the economic numbers are right now, how we got here, what they were a few years ago. And frankly, you can decide if you're better off than you were at that point in time. But you cannot sit here and say those things and allow any thinking person to believe them because they're not based in reality. And when it comes to, Trump's just looking to cut taxes or whoever, the other guys are looking to cut taxes for the wealthy, I haven't heard anybody say that. Have you? I mean, I know it's my job to follow the news, but I'm happy to be proven wrong here. But I have not heard or seen anybody talk about cutting taxes for the wealthy right now. I haven't heard anybody talk about a tax cut. And nor should anybody talk about a tax cut right now. A tax cut is not what needs to happen in this country. We don't need, I would love more money in my own pocket. I'm not saying tax cuts in general are a bad thing. They're not. But the problem for the country is not resolved by a tax cut. We don't cure inflation by cutting taxes right now. The only way to slow this thing down is to cut spending. And part of the spending cuts have got to be cuts that get people back into the labor force. And then they're making money through a private sector, not the government, not the public sector. That's what has to happen. It ties into the jobs report from last week. The jobs report last week showed 71,000 government jobs added to the payrolls. 0 in manufacturing. 0, like a big old goose egg in manufacturing. 71,000 government jobs. The government does not create anything. The government only operates with other people's money. Yet that has been one of the great job creators over the last 3 years, and it's simply unsustainable. Now, you look at this, and there was this article here in the Wall Street Journal. The inflation thief rises again was one of the great pieces they wrote. And they also wrote this article that really hits home for a lot of us, I think. The hidden costs of home ownership are skyrocketing. Rising insurance premiums, property taxes, and maintenance costs show little sign of abating. And talked about home insurance skyrocketing. Home insurance premiums rose by more than 10% on average in 19 states last year in 23. More Americans also moved to areas that, yes, can be more disaster prone, which has increased the exposure to those events and also has resulted in rates going up. So you look at insurance rates skyrocketing, right? That's one of the many things people are dealing with right now. Skipping repairs. Plenty of homeowners are having to stretch financially to meet their home-related expenses. Nearly 1 in 5 said they could not afford a $500 emergency repair without going into credit card debt right now. That was a February online survey of 1,000 homeowners by tech company Clever Real Estate. 42% say they've skipped home repairs or maintenance because of the cost. And then when you factor in property taxes as well to the equation, which has also gone up as home prices have gone up the last couple of years, people are getting squeezed at every turn. So this is, and it's happening all over the country. It's not exclusive to the East Coast, to the West Coast, to here in Kansas City. It is all over the country. And these things are compounding. And the housing affordability index is at the lowest it's been since the early 1980s when you factor everything into the equation. Down payments, 30% fixed rate mortgages, median priced existing homes with a median family income. We are at the lowest levels of affordability for homes in 40 years. So it's impossible right now for young people, especially, to get into the market. It is very difficult for people to maintain their homes when they're on fixed incomes. People are getting priced out. And I think there's a tie-in here to what happened last week in Jackson County. This in particular, the property tax fiasco, home insurance premiums going up, while then you've got two billionaire owners saying, I need more of your money. They walked into a perfect storm for a plethora of reasons, as we've talked about a lot the last couple of weeks. But this article in the Wall Street Journal on the cost of people maintaining the homes they've been in many cases for decades, are skyrocketing. And at the same time, Clark Hunt and John Sherman said, we need help with our homes. We need you to help us with our homes, Kauffman Stadium and Arrowhead. And the taxpayer and the homeowner revolted. 913-408-7957. I'm telling you, these costs, it's not just about how difficult it is to get into a home. It's about the maintenance of that said home right now. I mean, look at your monthly payment. When you got your taxes going into escrow and things like that, I guarantee you it's up significantly. 913-408-7957. Quentin Lucas is coming up in 20 minutes here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM and the KCMO Talk Radio app. That's right. Dan Bongino coming up today at noon on KCMO Talk Radio. So the other big thing that was baked into yesterday's inflation report, auto insurance. Holy smokes. Have you seen the cost of your auto insurance and how much that has gone up? Mine went up, I think it was $30 a month, which would be it's right about 20% when I got the bill for this year. And insurance, whether it's homeowners insurance, which we were just talking about, or auto insurance. Insurance may be the underreported inflation story of all right now. Now, what's going on? Well, cars, there are more wrecks happening. That's been happening since COVID. People started driving like maniacs in 2020 and never slowed down when other people got back on the roads. Car repairs are more expensive. Labor's obviously increasing. Parts have increased, things like that. And then don't forget about all the fancy technology the new cars have. All of a sudden, these small fender benders cost thousands of dollars. EVs are being written off after mid-level wrecks. Another part of the EV nonsense that people didn't think twice about before they bought them. And then for homes, you've got larger claims due to bigger, more expensive homes. Yes, there's also, people moving to areas where there are more climate-related issues, whether it's tornadoes, hurricanes in Florida, California wildfires, things like that. So you've got things like that going on. And it's creating this bubble in the insurance market. Florida is the worst of the worst. I mean, ask anybody who's got a home in Florida right now, and the average cost of home insurance in Florida is like $10,000, which is 4 to 5 times the national average in terms of your out-of-pocket cost every single year. It's nuts in Florida right now. And it's a trend that's happening all over the country. And to bring it back here to Jackson County, you've got people last week who are struggling and have been figuring out how to stay in their homes, how to keep their property taxes down, how to get their assessments under control. And what happened? They told John Sherman and they told Clark Hunt, we love you, we love your teams, but right now we need to send a message. That's what it was. It was a message last week. Yes, it was a vote on the stadiums. It was a vote on not wanting to go to a ballpark downtown. There were a plethora of reasons that people voted no. We want the Crossroads to stay as is, yada, yada, all that. But as each day passes, the common theme, the common thread in all of these stories, in all of these no votes, for the most part, is people feeling like they're getting screwed, whether it's on the right or the left, right? They have these very different viewpoints on how they're getting screwed and why they're getting screwed, but it is across the board where the average worker feels like he or she is getting hosed. And the thought right now, and the world we're living in right now in 2024, much different from 2006, when things were humming right along. And the voter in Jackson County said, not now. Not now. 913-408-7957. Dustin's in Blue Springs checking in on KCMO 95.7. Dustin, good morning.
Morning. I work in the auto body industry, and the cost of repairs has drastically gone up in the past couple of years with all these new systems on these cars, lane mitigation cameras, cruise control, radar modules, and blind spot monitors and all that. A simple bumper or fender repair normally would be, $1,500. Well, that comes up to when you add in the calibrations of these systems after an accident, and adds another $500 to $1,000 to the price to repair these things.
Let me ask you this, Dustin. I'm curious on this. Is it also because I called my insurance guy when the bill came in. I said, what the heck's going on? I knew it was going to go up, but it was crazy. He said, I've never seen this many people driving without insurance. So it creates this snowball effect where prices are going up for some of the reasons you mentioned. Some people aren't getting insurance. So then you've got more uninsured drivers on the road, which then sends the cost up for everybody else.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. I can't tell you how many times I go to write an estimate for a customer and they say that the person who hit him doesn't have insurance.
Wow. And you combine, I don't know about this angle of it, Dustin, but I'm curious, when you've got 10 million people now added to the country the last 3 years, how many are driving around the streets? How many are driving in cars? How many are getting licenses from various states? I don't know if that plays a role, but I wonder that as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that. I just know the price of everything has gone up when it comes to the auto industry. It has gone up drastically.
Yeah.
I remember, when I started in this business, I painted my own car and it cost me $250 in materials to paint my own car. Now, if I was to do it, it'd probably cost me $3,000 in materials, my cost.
Thank you, Dustin. Thank you, man. Appreciate you. But don't worry, Pops has it all figured out. Inflation's coming down.
Well, I do stand by my prediction that before the year is out, there'll be a rate cut. This may delay it a month or so. I'm not sure of that. We don't know what the Fed is going to do for certain.
The birds are calling
but look,
BS.
We have dramatically reduced inflation from.
Stop. People aren't buying it. And by the way, you start bailing out student loans unilaterally, inflation will keep going up.